Si Dr. Rosario Vergere, kasalukuyang pangalawang kalihim para sa Public Health Services ng DOH, ay itinalaga ng ating Pangulo bilang OIC ng Departamento.
This is already the BA.5 over that of the BA.4. If you sequence like 100 specimen and you see 60% of the specimen are positive for that BA.5, then you can just imagine that this may be the one driving the increase in the cases. And we know that BA.5 is really highly transmissible. For that reason alone, at the same time, it can also evade our protection in terms of getting the vaccine and previous infection.
Tuloy na po tayo. Nag-cite po kami ng mga research papers to support our position na magsimula tayo mag-transition to 5 days in-person classes. Wala na po tayong aantayin with regard to this pandemic dahil ang sinabi po ng mga public health experts noon, we need a vaccine. The vaccine is already here. Ang sabi po nila, we need the gamot. The medicine is already here.
From the nation's capital, all sides, all the time, ako po si Robbie Alampay.
At ako naman si Gretchen Ho, the big story tonight.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. has appointed the Health Undersecretary Maria Rosario Vergere as the officer in charge of the Health Department.
Let's find out the reaction of the medical community in this report by JC Cosico.
Si Dr. Rosario Vergere, kasalukuyang pangalawang kalihim para sa Public Health Services ng DOH, ay itinalaga ng ating Pangulo bilang OIC ng Departamento.
The Marcos administration has finally named who will lead the health department, well, at least for now. It's no other than Health Undersecretary Maria Rosario Vergere, who also served as the agency's spokesperson during the COVID-19 pandemic. Under Memorandum Circular Number 1, the OIC shall perform her duties until July 31, or until a replacement has been appointed or designated. But some ask, why was she not appointed as DOH chief?
Dun sa bakit, dahil syempre pinagpipilian pa kung sino ang magiging mamumuno sa Department of Health. Wala po kaming impormasyon dun sa ilan ang pinagpipilian.
The DOH, for its part, thanked President Marcos Jr. for the designation. The department vowed to carry on the gains of previous administration, including continuing pandemic response and providing universal health care to Filipinos. For former Health Chief Francisco Duque III, selecting Vergere as OIC is a good choice. He said Vergere has integrity and competence and is a true public servant. Former Health Chief and now Iloilo Congresswoman Janet Garin said she's confident in Vergere's capability as the agency's officer in charge. Garin said she has worked with Vergere before and witnessed how the new OIC rose up the ranks. The Private Hospital Association of the Philippines also welcomed Vergere's designation.
Alam naman ni Yusek ang problems ng mga hospitals, especially government and private hospitals din. Ano? So sa amin okay lang yun.
The same goes for Octa Research Professor Ranjit Rai. Rai said Vergere's appointment ensures that there's continuity in the agency. And despite her not being a fan of Octa, Rai said Vergere must be shortlisted to be the next health secretary. Infectious disease expert Dr. Ronchin Solante hopes Vergere could provide direction to the government's pandemic response and streamline processes at the DOH.
We should know what her priorities are and then what are the plans for an exit of this pandemic. Probably also institute reforms in the Department of Health. We have to streamline the decision process in terms of recommendations and policies para mabilis, para hindi ma-delay.
He's also confident that Vergere can be the next health chief. While the chief executive has yet to name the health secretary, the palace says the interagency task force will continue its job to spearhead the government's pandemic response. For News 5, JC Cosico, We Are One News.
Here to talk to us more about her appointment and plans for the department, we have with us on the line DOH Officer in Charge, Maria Rosario Vergere. Yusek Vergere, welcome to the big story. And we should say congratulations on your appointment.
Good evening po, sir. Magandang gabi po sa inyo lahat.
Ma'am, let's start with, well, people of course have been waiting for this appointment. It's one of the, one of the dissonant things that people have noted in the first weeks of the Marcos administration, identifying the public health situation as a crisis. And yet it has taken this long, and in fact still longer, for us to wait for a permanent Secretary of Health. At least on the level of being OIC, what are the marching orders from President Marcos?
Well, specifically, he said that we should be able to improve the coverage in our vaccination. Although we have already achieved almost 71 million fully vaccinated Filipinos, we are still very much wanting as to the booster doses of our population. So that was first of the marching orders. And of course, focusing on the vulnerable population. He noted of these different areas in the country where there are these laggers in our regions focusing on senior citizens. And we need to ramp up our vaccination among our senior citizen population. The second would be, of course, the COVID-19 response. We need to find a way to continue on and sustain what we have done before so that we can be able to prevent further transmission, strengthening our monitoring and surveillance systems, and also we need to be able to prevent that our healthcare system will be overwhelmed if there would be this kind of situation that the cases will continue to increase. Another one would be the healthcare workers, that he would want our healthcare workers' benefits to be provided to them, that we would be able to look into the plight of our healthcare workers in the different facilities of the country.
Yusek, obviously leadership, as we said, is of the DOH is something that people have been asking for, looking forward to, hoping for, and speculating on. Could you give us an idea of what are some key policy and leadership and direction matters that can now be more possible and facilitated by having an OIC relative to not having an OIC? And for that matter, what are the remaining gaps between having an OIC and a permanent Secretary of Health?
First and foremost, having an OIC would really have that kind of head among the different units of the Department of Health. Although we were already managing, as we have retained career officials in the DOH, but will always be different if there would be an OIC. We can now be able to do our policy directions. The second would be we'll be able to manage all of these transactions that had been in process before, and we needed an OIC to further negotiate and do these processes. The third one would be, of course, the leadership should be looked up. The different units are expecting that there would be a head to lead the department, and this means a lot to our personnel, that there would be somebody who can lead them and who can guide them and manage all of our processes. So this, I think, would be the advantages of having an OIC. Now, as to the difference between an OIC and a permanent secretary, I guess there is not much difference. I think it's just the appointment. But of course, there would be some matters that has to be referred still to the Office of the President, being that there is this OIC designation still for the head of the DOH.
Yusek Vergeire, in our report a while ago, a lot of good words for you. Your appointment as OIC, keywords, public trust, competence, integrity, and you've been with the Department of Health for quite some time, if I believe 2015. What can we expect from you if you were to be appointed as a DOH Secretary? And outside of the COVID-19 pandemic, what would be some projects that you'd like to divert resources to?
First, I've been with the Department of Health since 2007. And I thank people and my colleagues for all of the trust that is being given to me. What would be our priorities now to divert other resources? First and foremost, we'd like to check first the plight of our healthcare workers. That would be first on my list. The second would be, of course, our facilities. And by doing all of this, we'll be able to achieve the different objectives of universal healthcare. So at the end of the day, we're looking at providing this universal healthcare to all of our citizens. So we need to just continue on with what we are doing. Not much difference because we just continue to work, and we have already started the different work that we have done for DOH. We will continue on that. But of course, there would be more strategies that we will be implementing so that we can better the health of every Filipino.
Yusek Vergere, follow up ko lang po dun sa isang tanong kanina. As you said, I mean, you still have enough authority and power. But just one specific thing, when it comes, for example, to other appointments within the entire bureaucracy of the DOH, other agencies attached to the department, will the OIC have power over that and authority for that? Or do we have to wait for an official, a permanent appointment?
Well, that is yet to be discussed with the Office of the President. But for now, I'll be managing the whole of DOH, including the attached agencies of the government of the DOH, like FDA, PhilHealth, and the others. As to the appointments, as to who would be heading the specific units of attached agencies of DOH, it will be up to the Office of the President, because the Office of the President is the one designating and appointing these specific leaders in the attached agencies.
Okay, maraming salamat po. That was DOH Undersecretary Maria Rosario Vergere. She has been appointed for now as OIC of the Health Department.
Maraming salamat po.
Join us in the conversation. Our big question tonight, what are your thoughts on Vergere's appointment as the Health Department's OIC? Share your thoughts on our Facebook and YouTube live stream or post a tweet with the hashtag #TheBigStory. We'll read some of your comments later on in the program.
More stories after the break. Keep it here on One News.
The voice of 32.2 million Filipinos was loud and clear with the message to serve our motherland. And this message has been reiterated in my oath to consecrate myself to the service of the nation. The days ahead may be full of challenges that call for us to be more united as a nation. But let me reiterate this. We can never go wrong if we are a people dedicated to honoring the will of God, to serving our country and our fellow men, and protecting the integrity of our families and the future of our children. If you all take a moment to listen to the call to serve and decide to heed the call, in the same way that many are already devoting their lives as hardworking farmers and fisher folk that ensure that there is food on our tables, dedicated health workers who help the sick, brave soldiers who fight for our country, honest and fair entrepreneurs who support our economy, patient school teachers that guide our children. I believe the country will be heading towards a future of hope, security, strength, stability, and progress. Magkasama sana tayong bumangon bawat araw, kasabay ang nag-aalab na pangako sa ating mga puso na mahal.
You're watching The Big Story here on One News.
The return of face-to-face classes seems all but set for the upcoming school year.
Vice President Sara Duterte assured parents and students of the safety of going back to schools amid the pandemic. Mobile journalist Jacob Lazaro gives us a front seat to the story.
Recess will soon be over. The new administration is dead set to continue with their plans to gradually transition to full face-to-face classes starting August. Vice President and Education Secretary Sara Duterte said learners, regardless of their vaccination status, will be allowed to come to school.
There should be no segregation and discrimination for the unvaccinated learners dahil hindi naman po mandatory ang vaccination program natin.
She also said mingling between learners in schools won't be a health risk.
Paglabas naman po nila sa eskwelahan ay naka-commingling po lahat ng vaccinated and unvaccinated natin.
But aside from vaccination, another concern brought up by teachers are the overcrowded classrooms.
Meron po tayong 50 students in a class, magkaroon tayo ng congestion, hindi natin maiwasan, hindi natin ma-impose yung establish natin na mga protocols.
Basa said this is especially concerning for those in public schools where a small classroom is occupied by up to 100 students. But the Vice President said that this can be addressed.
Gumagawa kami ngayon ng department order na mag-streamline ng requests ng construction ng classroom na implementable kaagad.
Despite calls from teachers groups to delay the start of the school year this August, Duterte said plans are still status quo, given that we have enough strategies in place to keep physical learning safe against COVID-19. But not all schools have such privilege. In fact, the Alliance of Concerned Teachers said many schools in outlying provinces don't even have a source of clean running water. Still, the Education Secretary said there are feasible alternatives.
Alcohol is always an option and an alternative. Doon naman po sa symptoms checking, nilagay po natin yun doon sa department order na ang parents po dapat ang mag-check sa kanilang mga anak.
Duterte assured parents that it is safe to go back to schools and that physical classes is long overdue given the big learning loss caused by the pandemic. But in case a student gets sick, blended learning will be an option. Mobile journalist Jacob Lazaro, we are One News.
Let's talk more about this and other pressing health issues in the country with UPPGH professor and the chairman of the Emergency Medicine, Ted Herbosa. He is joining us live via Zoom. Welcome to The Big Story, Dr. Ted.
Hi, good evening, Robbie, and good evening, Gretchen, and thank you for having me here at The Big Story.
Dr. Herbosa, nakita niyo naman, we talked with DOH OIC Vergeire. A lot of praise, of course, and a lot of confidence, but it still begs the question, whether it's Vergeire or not, why an OIC? It's been 2 weeks, why don't we still have a permanent health secretary?
We will have to ask that question to the people that are choosing the selection committee, the president. Of course, I'm sure they feel that the position of Secretary of Health is an important one. I have known USEC Vergeire, Secretary Vergeire now, since I was an Undersecretary of Health of the department in 2010. And I have seen her work and come up the ranks. And she's a competent public health official, a career public health official. And I'm sure she'll be an able leader of the department as an officer in charge.
Okay, well, Dr. Then let me just ask this. I mean, from a governance standpoint, you've helped government, you understand the bureaucracy of the Department of Health. What's the difference? What are the limitations as well as the potentials of being an OIC of a department? And what is the gap that is still not going to be filled with an OIC relative to having a permanent health secretary?
That's a very good point. No, we have several stages. I've also been appointed as OIC when the former secretary would leave, and there are restrictions to what you can do as an officer in charge. So that you're able to run the routine running of the department, making sure that the agency will be able to function people get their salaries and the programs continues. That's very important for us now that we're still having some effects of the pandemic. So that's a very important part of this appointment. The other one is when you are appointed acting secretary. So the acting secretary has more powers. That means you now can appoint and reshuffle organization. As an OIC, you cannot reshuffle the agency positions and people are just status quo and the agency continues. And of course, a true appointment, you are the alter ego of the president when you are appointed as the Secretary of Health.
Hey, Doc, recent reports say from the Philippine Genome Center that the BA.5 subvariant is already the dominant COVID variant in the country. Given the more transmissible nature of that variant and the evasiveness of BA.5 from our current vaccines, does that change our strategy when it comes to approaching vaccination, being more aggressive with boosters, and are we ready really for face-to-face classes?
That's correct. No, the BA.5 is now the dominant Omicron subvariant in the Philippines and in the rest of the world. All other countries that have been reporting increase of cases have been reporting the BA.5 as a dominant variant. And you're right, yes, we will continue and push for what we call the booster dose. In the Philippines, we have 70.8 million Filipinos already with 2 doses, or the single dose, the J&J, who are considered fully vaccinated. However, only 15 million Filipinos are, or 20%, have gotten the first booster. So these are people that need to update. So we are at a backlog. They said the target should be about 40 million should have had their boosters by now. So we need to ramp up the 20% to as high as 50 or 70% of those that are eligible. And this is to protect them in case of these new infections. And as you said, rightfully, the BA.5 has what we call immune escape. Now, sometimes even if you're vaccinated, fully vaccinated, and you're not updated, the vaccines are not updated, you can still catch the Omicron subvariant.
Given all of that, I've been getting reports that now reinfection is a real concern. I have friends who have been infected by COVID twice, 3 times, 4 times. Do we have any metrics to measure reinfection? And does that change the ballgame? Because now there's a term that's being floated around, which is the reinfection wave, and they're seeing that the BA.5 could possibly be that wave.
That's right. No, the reinfection is due to the mutations of several variants because you have continued transmission, especially in places where they have no masking, they're not fully vaccinated. They have continued transmission and thus continued mutations of the virus. When the virus mutates to another form, that's the one that can reinfect you. So like, for example, if you just got COVID, then if there is a new variant that enters the country or predominates, you can still get reinfected with that new variant. So this is the one that is now making it, that's what you call the newer transmissions and the increase of this reinfections. That's why it's still very important. We still recommend masking, the mask mandate, and we still recommend updating the vaccines through your booster because those are your two best protections. And for the schools, I think we are ready as long as we have a plan on what to do if the children in the schools get infected. So there must be a plan, like they said, that they will do blended learning or some form of other learning so that the classes can continue. But I think we've learned how to battle this virus. So I think it's time for our children to get back to school and have all the interactions and learn again after 2 years of no actual physical school.
Dr. Ted, we're almost out of time with you, pero isang mabilis na follow-up lang. Kanina, you were explaining the difference between an OIC, an acting secretary. Pagka-acting, baka pwede na mag-appoint and so on. So that brings it a level above maintaining the day-to-day operations that an OIC can take care of. And then a permanent appointment, as you said, is officially the alter ego of the president. You can start talking about strategy, even the whole philosophy of what public health and the Department of Health stands for. other questions lang doon, just some details. Can an OIC, for example, sign contracts? Can an OIC establish deals? And especially given that this OIC chip is only until July 31 for now, what can we hope for in terms of having an understanding of the strategy and the philosophy of this government when it comes to public health in general?
Of course, the OIC can sign contracts, can sign promulgations or administrative orders. They can sign this as long as it goes through the proper process. For example, a contract for a procurement must go through the Republic Act 9184, which is the procurement law. So if it went through that, it will be it can be signed. And also there are price limits of what even an OIC or a secretary can sign, because some contracts, if they are huge, will go up to the Office of the President.
Okay, maraming salamat po, Dr. Ted Herbosa. We'll pause for a short break. Keep it here on One News.
My father built more and better roads, produced more rice than all administrations before his. President Rodrigo Roa Duterte built more and better than all the administrations succeeding my father's. Much has been built, and so well, that the economic dogma of dispersing industry to develop the least likely places has been upturned. Development was brought to them. Investors are now setting up industries along the promising routes built. And yet, the potential of this country is not exhausted. Following these giant steps, we will continue to build. I will complete on schedule the projects that have been started. I'm not interested in taking credit. I want to build on success that's already happening. We will be presenting the public with a comprehensive infrastructure plan. 6 years could be just about enough time. No part of our country will be neglected. Progress will be made wherever there are Filipinos, so no investment is wasted. What we teach in our schools, the materials used must be rethought. I am not talking about history. I am talking about the basics, the sciences, sharpening theoretical aptitude and imparting vocational skills, such as in the German example, alongside the national language with equal emphasis and facility in a global language, which we had and lost. Our teachers from elementary up are heroes fighting ignorance with poor paper weapons. Once we had an education system that prepared coming generations for more and better jobs. There is hope for a comeback. Vice President and soon-to-be Secretary of Education, Sara Duterte Carpio, will fit that mission to a T. What we teach in our school.
You're still watching The Big Story here on One News. Let's now take a look back at our big question tonight. What are your thoughts on Vergere's appointment as the Health Department's OIC? Here's what netizens had to say. Many netizens are happy with Vergere's appointment, saying she's deserving and competent enough to lead the health department. Some netizens, like Philip Pasion, even believe that Vergere should be the official health secretary.
However, some commenters were expressing reservations. They say that although Vergere is a, quote, okay choice, the president should choose someone new or someone who is not a current official of the health department. Netizens like Joe and Francis say they look forward to Marcos Jr. appointing his official permanent DOH secretary by the end of the month. And of course, you may also continue to join us in this conversation. Simply use the hashtag #TheBigStory and then follow us on Twitter and Facebook at OneNewsPH. Like earlier, comments or tweets will be featured as part of our agenda to include you, the public, in the big story. And that's the big story tonight. For more updates, follow News 5, the Philippine Star, and Business World online. You may also log on to onenews.ph for more in-depth analysis. Ako po si Robbie Alampay.
The Big Story is also available via Signal Play app. Make a free account now at signalplay.com and stream One News anytime, anywhere. I'm Gretchen Ho. Mask on, wash hands, and stay safe, Philippines.
We are One News, all sides, all the time.